You would think, having made this much progress over the last 25 years, that we would be experiencing this moment of very warm embrace, right? But instead, what do we see? A backlash unlike anything that we've ever seen before, right? Defenders of the bureaucracy lawyering up, denying every charter, fighting every facility, suing counties that approve charters on appeal, spending millions on media campaigns that outright lie about charter schools, telling parents that they may lose their right to enroll their kids in any public school if they dare express interest in enrolling in a charter school. Folks, I'm not making this stuff up. It's all part of a strategy from the defenders of the bureaucracy. An escalation of that conflict happened just in June when the National Education Association, the NEA, for the first time in 17 years, updated their charter school policy, finding that charter schools are a now proven failed experiment. And because of that, 3 changes are needed. Number 1, that until issues of fiscal transparency and accountability can be addressed, there must be a moratorium on charter school growth. Number 2, that the only entities that should be able to authorize a charter school are school districts. And number 3, that school districts should be able to deny a charter for virtually any reason, including fiscal impact. 1 month later, having not updated its charter school policy for many years, the California Teachers Association updated their policy to be a virtual replication of the NEA new policy. Which brings us now to this governor's race. Because what we find is that historically in California, as Margaret was saying, we have been very fortunate that governors have been supportive of charter schools. Republicans and Democrats all the way back to 1992. And Governor Brown has been phenomenally supportive of our schools. And most of the candidates running, all of the candidates running really, have at least moderate levels of support for charter schools. Gavin Newsom, while he hasn't really had any policy impact on our schools whatsoever, he has been available to make some school visits and always available to say a few nice things. Until this year, when suddenly he decides that he needs the endorsement and the funding of the California Teachers Association. What charter school policies does he suddenly start espousing? Anybody want to guess? Number 1, that until issues of accountability and transparency can be resolved, there should be a moratorium on charter schools, that the only entities that should be able to authorize a charter school are school districts, and that school districts should be able to deny charters and renewals citing fiscal impact. You heard that right. Gavin Newsom has signed on to the idea that your school district should be able to close your school and you have absolutely no right of appeal, except for like technicalities around procedural stuff. This is probably the most hostile, the most threatening position that anybody this close to the governorship has ever had. It means that families in our 1,300 schools are going to need to lay awake nights worrying that perhaps their school will be closed. And for hundreds of thousands of other parents, they will know that there is no hope that something better might come to them. Fortunately, like the 630,000 students attending California's charter schools, we have a better option that we've all seen this morning. Not just a better option, a phenomenal option. Former Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. I've nearly been on this job now 10 years. In all that time, I have never come across a more courageous, full-throated supporter, champion for kids and for families than Antonio Villaraigosa. A man who along the way recognized that very powerful interests had come together to support policies that were not in the interests of kids. And he had the courage to stand up. He had the courage to make the difference. I have been on the phone with Antonio Villaraigosa after 11 p.m. at night, working the additional votes that needed to happen to make breakthroughs happen. And now Antonio has this vision for difference making for kids to go all the way to the state level. which was why it was abundantly clear to me and everyone at CCSA Advocates that we must endorse Antonio Villaraigosa to be the next governor of the state of California. This is the level of difference-making that's now been put in front of us as we prepare to embark on our second quarter-century of work. And it is a tall hill. But folks, we have taken tall hills before. We have overcome front-runners before, like the one that used to have dominion over LA High, where recently we had this highly respected charter school organization open a new high school, City Charter. A shining jewel of what the charter school movement is all about. I would say a jewel of the city of Los Angeles, exactly the kind of program that the founders of LA High all those years ago envisioned for their campus. You know, a school that uses absolutely no selective admissions criteria, the kind of school that Matthew could have attended. But one man, Steve Zimmer, an LA Unified board member, had it out for City, and made sure that after 1 year on that campus, it was forced to leave because supposedly there was no space. Folks, like I said, the campus used to host over 5,000 kids in the 1990s. 2 years ago, it was at 1,200 kids, and there's no space for City? And yet, he kicked them off anyway. And the school, having absolutely no other place to go, it closed. And it is my view, no, the thing that just beyond that, then at the same time, for Steve Zimmer in other settings to be saying that he was a friend of charters. Oh. In my view, what Steve Zimmer did to City is what Gavin Newsom wants to see happen across this entire state. To inflict major harm on our schools and to claim to be our friend. And so we have no choice but to deal with Newsom in the same way that City dealt with Zimmer. Valerie Brahma, the amazing leader of City Charter, what did she do? She saw that there was another candidate in the landscape, Nick Melvoin, endorsed by Antonio Villaraigosa, another full-throated, courageous champion for charter schools, right? What did Valerie do? Man, she went out and she made sure all of her parents were in Charter Nation. She educated everybody she knew about the importance of this vote. And she did everything she could to get out the vote. Precinct walking, phone banking, encouraging all the other charter leaders to do the same. And what resulted was a grassroots effort unlike anything that we have seen before. Now, folks, people spent a lot of time focusing on how much money went into the LA races, and there was a lot. Don't get me wrong, we are very fortunate to have such generous supporters. But focusing on that can sometimes lead you to miss a really important part of the story. In 2013, the first time that we took on Zimmer, 5 minutes after the polls closed, they announced the absentee ballots. We were down by 4,000 votes. 4 years later, 5 minutes after the polls closed, we're up 6,000 votes. Absentee ballots, that's not money. That's your base. Coming out in major ways. Charter school parents turned out at 3 times the rate of other registered voters, and in the end, we won. It was decisive. It wasn't even close. And so now the question is, are we able to do it at a state level? And so that's why it's so important that everybody in this room, everybody in this conference must act like Valerie did. You must get yourselves into Charter Nation. You must equip yourself to educate others about the importance of this election. And we must do absolutely everything that we can to get out the vote, which in a state election like this means phone banking, making those calls, because we know our greatest asset are our own people, voter by voter, making the case. 630,000 calls going out across this state so that the charter voice is heard. That's why we've made this goal, before we get to the primary, just 70 days from now, that we achieve CPK. CPK. A call per kid. And folks, as soon as this conference is over, I am hitting the road. And I am going to be talking to everybody that I can possibly find about them doing their part. But the real thing for us to focus on right now is if just the attendees of this conference, all made the commitment to do your part, we would get halfway to our goal. So please, I'm asking all of you, go by the CCSA Advocates booth. Sign up for Charter Nation if you haven't already. Get the materials that you will need to help educate others about the importance of the vote, and get your CPK button, signifying that you are going to do your part to help get out the vote. And you can also start to work on it right this second, if you haven't already, by texting CPK to 52886. I'll repeat that. 52886 is the number to text CPK. Good, I'm glad. I've seen some people grabbing for phones. We've been saying it in other settings as well. I'll say it one more time. Texting to 52886. The three letters, CPK. A call per kid.